Oh gosh. I think it was better. The previous one was better. Okay. Now it's better. Okay, this was the code we were looking at yesterday. So take a look at it and ask me if you have any questions about this. Okay. And if you check it out. Yes, yes, it was a state of- I Great. So this is the code. Any questions you have about this code? Sure. So we had a class called father having this data member bike. Then you have a father constructor. Then the father inherits father has another data member, another constructor. What we discussed was that the constructor of your subclass automatically calls the constructor of the superclass. So if you look at this line, it is hidden. Even if you do not write it, it will be executed. And that was what we discussed. And that's how we created an object of type rich father and printed both the attributes. Okay. Now the question is, let's make a small change here. So I'm just messing up with the constructors here, converting this into a parameterized constructor. So let me say I'm going to pass a string s here and I'll say bike equals to s. That's all I have done. So I've changed the constructor in your super class to a parameterized constructor. So do you think this code will work now? So you're creating an object of type reach further. It goes, calls the constructor. It says here calls the constructor of the superclass. But which constructor it is calling? Default constructor. Because you are not providing any arguments here. But you do not have a default constructor here. So it's the same problem that we were having previously. If you write a parameterized constructor for a class, but then try to create its object in a default way, you get an error if you don't have the default constructor. So let's just check it once. If you want, you can hide it. If you want, you can write it. So you see an error that there are no arguments, actual and formal arguments differ in length. So how do we resolve this? Either you write down a default constructor there, that's one thing you can do. But since now you are dealing with constructors yourself, you unhide this line and you provide an argument here. So you can provide an argument here. So now you are calling the parameterized constructor of your base class. So now this Honda will be copied to us and that will become the value of y. Okay. So what's the best way to write this code? So let's say I want to have parameterized constructor for everything. So let me make a small change here. Let me have two strings here. Let's say one for your bike and another for jet. And now when I create an object of reach further, I'm going to pass both the values here. So one for your bike and For the jet. Can you tell me how should I change the lines here? So I'll repeat the question again. So this is your constructor call. When you create an object of type rich father, you are passing two strings. The first one is for the bike attribute, second one is for the jet attribute. So both of these gets copied here. Right? Now how should the lines here change? Private jet equals to J, right? Because we are taking that value as an argument. Anything else that should change? Super B. So that's all. That's how you need to handle constructors while you inherit a class. And let's just check whether it's working or fine or not. Okay. So the idea here is again, super keyword, it allows you to access your methods from your super class. Even it holds true for the variables also. Let's say I write a variable in age here. And let's say for some reasons I again define this variable here. What do you think will be happen? What do you think will happen? So whatever methods I'm doing now with a data member here, I'm saying okay, father has a age. Rich father also has exactly the same attribute. Maybe rich father wants to show he is young, so something like that. He's a different attribute age. So now when I say here f dot age, which age am I referring to? So let me write a function. Let's say show age system dot return. I'm sure okay, show age. What do you think it will show when I call this function? For the rich father, let's keep it 45. I'm initializing it as 45, and here it is 65. So here, what do you think we'll see? 45 or 65? 65. Again, the same idea, right? If you have two things, exactly the same, both in the superclass and the subclass, when you ask for it, it will represent the specific one. So which is more specific here? 45 one. So it shows you 45. And what you want to show see the one that is inherited from your base class? Use the super keyword again. Right? So if you print age, it is going to show you 45. If you write super dot it show you 65. So that's the use of your super keyword. Hmm? We used it in methods, right? What was the method? Hmm? We created a method called vacation, right? And we had the same method in the subclass and in the superclass. So it's exactly the same thing. It's just that instead of method, it's variable now. Same way. So if you want to call the vacation function of the rich father, you simply say vacation. If you want to call the function from the base class, you just super vacation. So that's the whole idea of using the keyword super. This keyword, okay, this is slightly different. Um, this was a question in the minors, right? So this keyword has a very different use. So this keyword is, it has nothing to do with inheritance. You can use it with any class over here. So let's say here, instead of taking s, I want to use this string bike here. Right? So what we have done here, bike equals, so when it was s here, we write here bike equals to s. Right? Now, so that the code is more clear, I want to use bike here so that I know it's a string for bike. And I write here bike equals to bike. What's going to happen then? Infinite loop. Right, so how does an assignment statement work? You take the variable on the left hand side and put its sorry, on the right hand side and put its value in the variable on the left hand side. Which bike is it? This bike or this bike? Look at the difference between both of these. This bike over here, this is a data member of your class. This bike over here, it is a local variable. Right? So you can actually print the value of bike here to see what is happening. So I'll leave that up to you. So when you're saying bike, it's actually referring to this bike. It will take the value of this bike and put it back in this. So it doesn't make anything. Nothing gets initialized. So what I'm saying is if you refer to this variable bike inside this constructor, it refers to this bike. So you need to differentiate between this data member and this local variable. That you do with the help of your this operator. So now when you say this dot by, it means whichever object has invoked this function, that's its data member by. So now you're saying this dot by equals to this one by. So this is used to differentiate between your data member and your argument. Okay. One more thing here about the subclass and superclass. Your rules of private still matter. So if you make this private in if you make this age as private over here, you cannot directly access it here. So if you say super.age here, it's going to show you an ad because your age is private over here. So in a way, you can say your private data members, they are not inherited. You can call a function here, a public function to do that. So something which is private in the superclass, subclass cannot directly see it. So the same rule still holds. Okay, so these are the few things we looked at. We saw what is inheritance. How do you call constructors properly? Your instance variable handling is the same thing. You have the same data member, the same with the same name in your subclass and in your superclass. Right? So your subclasses variable will hide the superclass one. If you want to access the superclass, use the keyword super. We talked about method overriding yesterday, having functions with the same name. You can again use the keyword super there. Okay, what's the use of method overriding? So one definitely in inheritance, when one class is inheriting the other, you want to have a specific behavior, you can use method overriding. But here is yet another. So let's say you are working on a project with one of your friends and he gives you a class file that you are going to use. He is not giving you the source file and you really don't like one function, one particular function that he or she has written. What are you going to do? So I give you a file, a class file, and you're very happy to use it. All the functions are very good, but one function you really don't like it. So what you can do is, and I say I'm not going to give you the source file. You can use my class file and all the functions, but you cannot edit my source. What are you going to do there? In that, you can use override. So what you can do, you can still inherit my class. You override that function there. You give it your own definition. Super. You just override it. Overriding is okay. So don't get confused. Overriding is, let's say you have a function called vacation here, right? And I write something gibberish here. Let's say we are poor, we don't take vacations. Right? And what I will do is, so me and Hriday, we are working on this project together. So I give him the class file for this father, not for the rich father, right? If you look at this over here, you see a class file for father here. This is all I give you, not the source code. You cannot touch my source in any way. But if you know, okay, there is a constructor, there is a function called vacation, like it. Whenever he invokes the function vacation, it says we don't take vacations. And let's say you want to change its functionality. You don't have my source code. So what you can do? Right? Then you can inherit my class. Even without having my source code, you can write, let's say this version of father. Right? Inherit, it can extend the father class. We can't write it like something like this. Extends father. Your own function vacation here. And you do whatever you want here. Right? So the idea is when you look at this class over here, it can use all the other functions of my class. You don't have to write them again. But you are overriding this vacation function in your own way. So the one which you didn't like, don't change that by overriding. But I'll be smart enough, I'll go one step further. I don't have anything to help up in my code. In any way, I just want it to override it. What you can do is you can make this function final. So if I say my void vacation function is final, it means final. Tomorrow, if any of you inherit this class, you won't be able to override this function. So you can do that. So I saw confusion between these two keywords, final and static, in most of the answer sheets. So what was the question there? So you had three attributes, right? You had an account number. So one thing I want to clarify is account number can be a string. And most of the numbers better be treated as strings. You see why? Many a times your account numbers have a lot of zeros, right, before it. So your account number will be something like 000625. So not a good idea representing it as integer. Second, you cannot do any kind of arithmetic operations on account numbers. I can't say add my account number to his and give me a third account number. So bad idea number as an integer, double or whatever you said. Float, right? Any of those kinds of variables. So account number can be a string. So there was some other problem with that. Anyways, so we had a class which had three members, account number, there was balance, and there was interest rate. This was the question, right? And you were asked which of these is the most suitable candidate for being static. Right, so I saw a logic there which many of you have written. If you look at the account number, since it's never changed for a person, you can keep it static. So there is a small confusion here. The concept is okay, nice. Account number for a person, it is never going to change. It doesn't simply mean something which is never going to change. So these are two different ideas. Static means when you create account for one person, let's say for me, you create account for another person, you create account for another person. We have a lot of objects. For these objects, that one value remains the same. That is static. Right? So all these three people, let's say me, my dad, my mom, we have three accounts, but we won't have the same account number, right? But the interest rate can be same, which comes from the bank side. So that is the idea of static. Now, this idea that account number doesn't change for a particular person, this you can capture by your keyword final. Final says once you have initialized account number for a particular object, you cannot change it in the future. Right? So that's the difference between final and static. So be careful with these terminologies. Okay, that's all. There's one more concept that we'll discuss in today's lab.